All right, so everyone is looking spick and span. Thank you guys for coming over this morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
No problem. How's the sound on everybody?
I think it's good, yeah.
Brett, you want to talk real quick?
Yep. How does this sound? Have some air coming in. We're good. All right.
Yeah. Gerald?
Yeah. How do I sound? Does that sound good?
Yep. Perfect. Good.
Great.
All right. Are you all good, team? Good to go? So we are live on YouTube, also on LinkedIn. Okay, excellent.
Harold, your hair is a little bit out of place.
I know. Does that sometimes with the light.
You have a lot of work to do every morning, huh?
I actually had hair for a while, and then my daughter made me get it during the pandemic, so I had long hair. I just cut it, and I'm so happy.
Oh.
Oh,
That's great.
Excellent. So team, can we begin? If you can give me your, go ahead, Anchal Lakshmani. All right, excellent. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much. We have three fantastic panel speakers with us today, and I'm going to walk you through their introductions briefly, but let me just tell you about myself and my law firm. First, my name is Amit Kaushal. I was in-house patent counsel at Motorola in Chicago. About 15 years back, I was the guy behind Moto Razr patents that we filed about 15, 16 years back. Now we're in a law firm called Photon Legal. We primarily help tech clients on protecting their IP and help them leverage this IP for raising money and to stop competitors from using their technology. We're doing this fantastic session on health tech. We have fantastic three panelists, Eric, Britt, and Gerald from the healthcare domains, and we're going to be talking about healthcare IP, their challenges on healthcare, their business models, what they have been doing to grow their businesses and stuff. And it's going to be fantastic 1 hour full fun-filled session. Thank you so much, Eric, Britt, and Gerald, for joining us today.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce our first speaker, Eric. So Eric has been primarily a sales and marketing guy. He has helped pharma companies grow from $2 million to $200 million in the span of 3 or 5 years. And he's brilliant in strategic planning, building processes, improving processes, and taking businesses from few millions to $100 million, $200 million companies. Eric is now the CEO of a company called Persone. And Eric, we want to understand from you a bit about your vision and your mission in Persone.
Thanks, Amit. Really appreciate it. And good day to everybody. Again, I'm president of Persone, CEO of Blink Science, which is the diagnostic part of the company. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. The operations of IT and finance within my group are down in Jacksonville, Florida. We are a global organization. We have structured a global healthcare platform to be scalable and to be able to be deployed around the world. Obviously, North America and Europe, there's a huge benefit that we're bringing, but really globally is really where we see the huge really advantage of what Persone is bringing. And just some background. So we've got two groups that are working on the analytics side within Persone. One is Persone Analytics, the other is Persone Connect. Within those two frameworks, and I'll talk a little bit about analytics because that's the one that's more relevant today, is that it is really the world's first interoperable, fully agnostic data mover. It's probably the best way to put it in healthcare, where what we're doing is really following the continuum of a patient throughout the kind of pathway in a health network, where the patient goes into the hospital from an ED, ER perspective, emergency room, emergency department. They move into ICU critical care. They move then into a hospital room. Then they're discharged, and then it really depends on which way they're going to be going. If they go into a rehab facility or long-term care facility, or they go home or into that hospital at home environment. And what we're doing, our company is really connecting in all the data pushes within those environments. So think of, electronic health records, think of laboratory systems, any type of testing or testing environment that's done at the bedside, any type of information that comes in from a data push, from a monitor, from an IoT, from a wearable. All of that information we're capturing at the hospital level, at the rehab long-term care facility, or at the home. We take it, we normalize, harmonize that data. And then what's really cool is that I have a global partnership with SAS Institute or SAS Analytics based out of Cary, North Carolina. And within that structured environment and global partnership that I have with them is that the data goes to them and they analyze it in real time. So literally we're getting feedback to the practitioner in real time, depending upon the use case. So it's huge benefit to the world market, huge benefit to the obviously more developed country markets. And we feel that it's a huge benefit to just the overall status of AI and AI generation. And then I'll just go real quickly into the Persone Connect side. That is a global entity that basically will allow the transitioning and training of individuals with basically no skills up to tech skills, up to potentially nursing skills, to be able to use devices, use tests in the field, and then obviously see patients in real time as well, to then provide medical record information back into our system. I'll leave it at that, Amit.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Eric. This is fantastic. What you're doing in the health tech industry. I think the developed nation, as a developing nation, can use the data integration at one point, because at so many places data is being collected, but is hardly analyzed. So solving a big problem in this world. Thank you so much for taking this up. Our next panelist is Brit. Brit is again is in the health tech. She is a founder of a company called Whole One Earth, and she is from Virginia, and she has primarily spent her time in the financial side of the healthcare, but now she is the founder and CEO of Whole One Health, and she is a visionary, and she is has a background in business, databases, and neuroscience and psychology. Brit, tell us about your mission and vision in your company.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So we overlap a little bit with what Eric's doing, but we're a bit different. And it was very exciting is it's all very person-centered and controlled. So rather than serving healthcare, we're serving the individual. We will be integrating with healthcare, and perhaps there's some opportunities to work with Eric. But our vision is to give individuals the tools to be able to aggregate all data that impacts their health, which begins with medical data. And so I've estimated that at less than 1% of the data that does impact our health. But then across all other data streams, whether you have apps or devices, you've got medical records, again, that aren't in an electronic health record system, whether it's papers and CDs or old x-rays and that kind of stuff, papers, and then bring all that together into a place where we will apply intelligence to give the individual some better insights into managing their own health. So it's almost like a self-help tool at the foundation of it. But then we will be integrating with healthcare providers so that when an individual does seek care, they're able to bring that information, that data to the healthcare providers in a meaningful way, not just a big data dump, so that they get the benefit of all the information that the user has collected, the insights that they've received. And then the third part is we're connecting with researchers, and that's where I began my journey. I ran a neuroscience research company for 18 years and saw continual failures in neuroscience and across all diseases. And I started digging into what are the problems? Why can't we figure out these diseases? We've been researching them for years. We've had so many promising theories, and it really came down to a lack of data. So by empowering people to collect their longitudinal data, then we can give them the tools to connect with the researchers if they choose to, and provide these very large data streams to the researchers, hopefully find out what's really happening in Alzheimer's and other diseases, and provide a means to find a cure. The contact with the researchers will continue through clinical trials and beyond, so that they can get great feedback during the trials of data that they might not have been collecting in a standard trial, and in post-market studies as well. Our first product is we've just launched is called Alzmeter. It's focused on brain health, in particular Alzheimer's. And so it's about reducing the risk of Alzheimer's through lifestyle changes. So again, it's not in healthcare, but it's about giving people self-help tools to understand. Researchers estimate that 40% of Alzheimer's cases and other dementias can be prevented. And that's by changing our lifestyles. So it's about giving people the tools to quantify how well they're living and hold themselves accountable.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think that is very required. It's important that you be on people's phone so that you can monitor a lot of their health parameters, and that's exactly what you're doing, helping people come out of brain health issues. Thank you so much, Britt, for coming over today for the session. Thank you very much. Our third speaker is Gerald. Gerald, thank you so much. Gerald was a football player in Calgary Stampede. I think he was a fullback, and from there he is now into healthcare for many years. He has done a lot of research, written a lot of blogs and articles on COVID-19 and how the world is still suffering COVID-19 issues and COVID-19 after effects. Gerald, over to you. Gerald, the CEO of a company called Todos Medical. Gerald, over to you. Tell us a bit more about your vision and mission at Todos.
Sure. So we have gotten involved at a very early stage in profiling the immune system with technology using AI out of Ben Gurion for blood testing, for cancer, really detecting changes in the immune system, quantifying that into zeros and ones and creating algorithms. We now have CE marks in breast cancer and colon cancer for blood testing. We've decided that going forward, the major challenge that we have in the immune system is COVID and long COVID. And so we're putting all of our energies and focus on addressing the long COVID epidemic that's emerging. What we've done since that time in terms of the blood testing is we've developed certain nutritional supplements to improve dietary importance, because that's a key input for all of these algorithms as we start to think about the whole person and wellness in healthcare. And then optimize that with what we like to call drug-like natural products called medical foods. And those will have claims such as the dietary management of long COVID under the supervision of a physician. And with that kind of claim, you empower physicians to use something that is natural, it's safe, but that can now have an impact on healthcare, and you can begin to monitor that with these markers. Again, creating that data which will feed back into these systems to create the algorithms. So we look at ourselves as more kind of the practical application of creating more valuable inputs, both from a dietary standpoint and from a diagnostic standpoint, to help empower these tools to give better health to people.
So tell us a little more about, to our audience, Gerald, about long COVID. What exactly is that, and how is the world suffering from long COVID?
Well, very early on in the pandemic, I'll give a simple example people will understand. They used to hear about people testing positive for 90 days. And scientists used to tell us that was artifact. Well, in fact, it wasn't artifact. The people still had COVID. And what we found is that a lot of people continue to have COVID and never actually get rid of their COVID, whether it was a severe COVID hospitalization, where you have a higher percentage of people who have long-term problems, or it was a mild one, but you never really got rid of it, and then it rears its head 2 to 3 months down the road. And because of this, we're finding out there are a lot of immune system changes at the macro level, cardiovascular system changes at the macro level, and metabolic changes at the macro level. So we're seeing it increased strokes, increased heart attacks. We're seeing it increased incidence of diabetes among kids and older people, type 1 specifically. And so we know at this juncture that there are going to be ramifications to the widespread COVID policy now and long COVID. And so we must have to address it. Harvard University studied $8.7 trillion economic problem for the US annually. And it looks like with new cases emerging, which is always the risk, is, how much new COVID is there going to be? But now with surges and new cases emerging in the US and other places, obviously worldwide. We have to start thinking about the long-term consequences more concretely. And I think the data capture is a crucial piece of it, but also we need better inputs to help really drive that innovation.
Excellent. So I also read your blogs and articles, Gerald, on COVID, the testing mismanagement and the vaccine. So are all the vaccines that people have taken, should they worry about the vaccines they have been taking? The third dose, the fourth dose now?
So what I would say, in line with guidance, I think you have to look at your situation. I think one of the things that we've learned, as we've seen and others, globally have published, is that a lot of vaccine injuries that may not actually be due to the vaccine per se, but it's that you had a COVID infection that was dormant prior to getting the vaccine or in and around the same time. And that's actually a contraindication for vaccination, right? And so the question is, if you have that chronically, is there a larger incidence of side effect as a result of that? So I think as we started to see, yesterday there was a big publication in Nature that showed there wasn't really much difference in antibodies between people with long COVID and people without long COVID. So you start to understand that you have to look more deeply at the immune system and how that's interacting to understand what your risk is. I think most people, the risk is low. And certainly we know with Novavax, which is a protein-based vaccine, the risk is even lower. But I do think it is important to talk to your physician about your history and your profile when you're making that decision.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gerald. That was really, really helpful. My next question is to Eric. Eric, since you have been in the healthcare for a very long time and your health companies grow from few million to few hundred millions of dollars, all the entrepreneurs, healthcare entrepreneurs who are listening to you currently, what advice would you give them on sales and marketing in the healthcare domain? What can they do to escalate or speed up their sales and marketing massively in a short period of time? What are your wisdom nuggets?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and again, haven't been in healthcare that long, but my gray hair does get away a little bit. But I think the biggest thing is really knowing your market, knowing who your competition is, and then figuring out a good pathway to differentiate yourself within that market. Again, if it's a COVID area with Gerald, if it's a IT area with Britt and myself, it's really knowing what else is out there. Is there competition? Is there anything close? And then really determining then a pathway and really a go-to market strategy. Then it really depends on where you want to go. Do you stay in the United States? Do you go into the North American market? Do you go into other areas, i.e. Europe and Africa and Latin America and APAC? And figuring out the easiest pathway is probably the best initially. If you're a startup, if you're a more entrenched organization, then you've got more leeway. And really figuring out, again, what is that pathway going to be? Is it going to be direct marketing? Is it going to be using contract forces? Is it going to be partnering up with a group? So all of those, you just got to look and see what the best kind of avenue will be, the quickest avenue, and really the most, I think, beneficial avenue in the short term from a revenue standpoint, and then go for it. And then really the next best thing is, again, never give up and really, focus in on, that passion and the drive that the company can have and make that kind of the go-to marker for you as an organization to connect into those other countries and basically nations around the world.
Brilliant advice. Thank you so much, Eric. Eric, so if somebody has a health tech company in the US and that company can possibly solve the issues of developing nations as well, what should be their strategy of entering developing nations for a health tech company in the US?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like kind of what we're doing, it's figuring out who those country partners from a business standpoint would be. It's figuring out, those teams that would be in country, be it through an NGO or through a foundation or something similar, and figuring out, what they've done in country and then try to connect with them and partner with them. Great example. We've got a group over in India directly that we're working with that basically is a hospital-owned group. So they own a couple of hospitals over in India, And then what they've done is they actually have developed a system of basically mobile clinics that run throughout their region in India. And so they see probably anywhere between 10,000 to 15,000 patients a month. They've garnered probably close to about 2 to 3 million patients within their system that are part of this mobile clinic setting. And so partnering with a group like that for our type of system is kind of the objective that we have already determined and have started down that pathway. And again, it's a good example. Again, figuring out who's there, who's been already kind of doing some of the legwork, but then seeing where we can help them, really increase their efficiencies and effectiveness in market.
Brilliant. So there's also a book on that. The book says who, not how. So the book means that find out who can do it and not how you should do it. So that's exactly what you are pointing at. Brilliant advice. Thank you so much. Britt, over to you. Britt, you mentioned that you have an app which helps people with their brain health. How much of AI are you using in your app, and what do you think AI can do in health tech in the times to come?
So our app was just released and we don't have any AI in it yet. This is the beta version, if you will. But we're really excited to be able to take advantage of the technology as it's developed so rapidly in the past few years since we began building this. So yeah, I see the future is incredible. I see health as being in the big data age right now. And in order to move into an age of intelligence, we need to bring all that data together and be able to run it through these algorithms, whether it's machine learning or AI. And I see tremendous opportunities to be able to deliver insights directly to people, as well as their healthcare providers and researchers to really move things forward very quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's actually where I think Britt and I have that connection, as she mentioned earlier. Because what we're doing, being agnostic, is the ability to capture data from partners, i.e. like what Britt's company, and pull data into our system and run it through AI. So that's kind of the background of what we do.
So how is AI improving healthcare system, Eric?
Wow. That's a really open-ended question. First off, AI has been around for years already. I think that's kind of the interesting thing. A lot of folks don't realize that AI has been, running basically the machinery area and the aviation area for, probably 15 years or so. Now it's become more the buzzword.
Also address the question of, is AI dangerous in healthcare? Because a lot of people are dangerous in healthcare.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and again, kind of leading into that. So, the dangerous part is when the AI is not validated. And that's kind of the issue. And so when it comes to different algorithms, et cetera, yes, they're great in basically running data through, but you need to ensure that those algorithms have been validated and basically ensure that again, danger, emergency condition with a patient is not, misled and or mistaken. And so I think it really boils down to garbage in, garbage out. So if you do have bad data, you're going to get bad results unless you clean it up. And so if you don't have the ability to clean it up and validate and to ensure that it works properly, you're going to have some issues.
Sure. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. Gerald, you were a football player in Calgary Stampedes and then the move to the healthcare. How did that move happen? And why did the move happen?
Right. Well, I'm an engineer by training. So I went to Stanford, I did engineering, and my father is actually a neuroscientist. So he ran 2 divisions at NIH, and we actually did projects with Britt's prior company, Neuroscience Associates, for some animal model work in Parkinson's. So that's how I got into the area, through family, and then, entered into the business side of things and have done a number of transactions over time. So I'm very excited about the opportunity in long COVID because it's very topical. And I think the big problem is it's going to be some time before new drugs hit the market. So that you just have this huge number of people who are suffering, who you can help with things now. And, you have to prove they work, of course, but, I think speed is essential.
So
yeah,
what are you?
I was going to say, your ironic timing on that, actually, if you do have it, NBC Nightly News last night had a
Yep.
section on COVID at the end. So a very good little section. So FYI.
Oh, I did not know that, but yeah, it's getting a lot of news now, especially given the concept of doing blood testing, which we've been doing for a year and a half. So that publication actually validated a lot of our work in our blood testing. So we're really going to get in and focus on this in the months and years ahead.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, Gerald, tell us what lessons football taught you, which you're still using in your life and your business.
Well, obviously, that you have to persevere, right? There's always going to be challenges, there's always competing interests, but sport in general obviously teaches you have to persevere, and that teams are very important, and that it's not about what, as you said, it's about who, right? So the people that you're able to work with that can actually deliver and make a difference in our business for patients is really the key.
Excellent. Thank you so much. But my next question is to you. What's your since you developed an app is a B2C model. B2C healthcare is a different business model than a B2B. What is your current biggest business challenge currently?
Yeah, so right now we're working on getting our product in a great position so that we can market it, and we're just starting to dribble it out to the market slowly. But getting it out there is how do we reach the people we're trying to reach? How do we validate who we think our target market is? How do we ensure that we have engagement and that people are really getting satisfaction from the app? And then, of course, in the end, we need to make sure we're making money and covering our nut and actually doing well. So yeah, this is my first time launching an app, having my own startup. I ran a startup for many years, but it's very exciting, very humbling, and yeah, I've learned quite a bit through it. So we're really in that space now, and I've reached out to many different marketing partners to learn from them and get their advice on things. So we're in the testing phase right now.
Okay, so you're saying marketing is something that you have to focus on now, since the app is already out.
Yes. Well, we're continuing product refinements, lining those up with our marketing. I mean, I guess a lot of people will go out there with a product and say, okay, this is great, let's go market the heck out of it. And they get 1 million people to sign up, but then they all leave because it's not meaningful. So I'm very, very tied to the reason I created it. Wasn't to make money, but it was to help people. I saw a huge need. If we can reduce Alzheimer's cases by 40% or more, wow, that's just amazing. And sort of really impact people's lives. We're coming to market with an incredibly low price. We set our annual price at $25, so it's a no-brainer for most people. No-brainer. But yeah, how do we get that in their hands? How do we convince, and how do we make sure that it's really doing what we want it to do? So I'm very hypercritical of it, and I use it myself. And I'm always like, oh, this isn't working. This isn't telling me enough, and go back to the team and say we need to add these things. But we're looking forward to getting a lot more feedback from a wider audience so that we can make those product refinements and then continue to iterate on the marketing.
Brilliant. Eric, one question to you. I read a book by Darren Hardy called Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. Darren Hardy says, if you are a restaurant owner, your business is not about food. If I'm a lawyer, a business is not about IP or lawyering. If you are in tech industry, a health tech industry, you're not about tech industry. All of us are in the business of sales and marketing, which is basically saying that 90% of your attention, founder's attention, should go on sales and marketing. About 10-15% should go on the product and the quality and stuff. Now, since you have been doing a lot of sales and marketing, how much of this is true? 85-90% of the founder's attention should go on sales and marketing. Is that correct?
I would say a little lower than that. I would say definitely, the 45 to 50% range would be probably more appropriate. Just because, again, you've got, the investor side, you've got the partner side that kind of encapsulates that kind of percentage need of time as well. But definitely there is a oversight of marketing and kind of the operations around, your sales team and your kind of lead generation that goes into the marketing and sales components. And so you do have to have some oversight of that and make sure and ensure that it's actually working correctly and that you're actually going after the correct markets. I will say that on, again, the investor side and the partner side, there are kind of that kind of element of marketing and sales that kind of goes into that as well, because if you can find a example of a partner that can co-market with you, fantastic. And the same thing even on the investor side, there's actually connectivity that can be really had within the investor community, and they can actually lead you to other potential investors and investing type of entities like a VC. So I think there's that kind of element too from a sales and marketing standpoint, but the bottom line of, the true sales and marketing within an organization, I'd say more like 40 to 45 to 50%.
50%. Okay. Gerald, next question is to you. What are some of the ways we can improve the global healthcare system? I mean, there's some issues are common in developing countries as well as developed countries. According to you, what are some of the ways we can improve the global healthcare system across continents?
Well, I think the biggest, when you look at why is healthcare better in industrialized countries, is access to better equipment, better materials and testing to be able to get answers sooner. There's no question that the diagnostic side of the healthcare system is the side that has somewhat of the least amount of investment, but it also has one of the biggest returns, provided you are able to fit it into an algorithm where the treatment is a lot cheaper. Like in cancer, if you're screening very early, you can find opportunity to save significant amounts of money. So from a global perspective, I think that it really a focus on improving diagnostics and access to diagnostics is what's needed, because that's what enables this technology that's being created by folks like Persone and Hole in One to actually, work. If people aren't taking these tests, if you're not getting the information, there's no inputs in which to democratize healthcare globally.
Correct. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to Britt and I think it's the data part too. I mean, as we've seen, and again, this is more in the US system of healthcare, there's so many silos. You've got Mayo with their silo. You've got Cleveland Clinic with their silo. I'm in Atlanta, so Emory's got their silo down the road from me. And the unfortunate thing is that if a patient is in Emory and then they go to Mayo, that Mayo physician will never know what they did at Emory. And vice versa, if they go back to Emory, the Emory physician will never know what they did at Mayo. And so what we're trying to do, and Britt is kind of, I think, on the same line of this, is that it's really breaking down those barriers and those silos to allow that data to flow, be it a diagnostic test, as Gerald was alluding to, but also just healthcare data in general, lab information in general. Just, again, that data stream, I think, is really where the value of healthcare benefit being the patient will ultimately end.
Brilliant. So one more question which stems up from this is that developing nations have different health issues and developed nations have different health issues. The moment developing nations are able to surpass their issues, they move into the other health issues which are there in developed nations. How do we handle that, Eric? How do we handle that you don't surpass one hurdle to foresee another hurdle?
Yeah, good question. And again, I think dengue fever. I mean, in America, who knows anybody who has ever had dengue fever? I can't raise my hand, I know. It's really finding out, what is the underlying really debilitating condition or conditions that are happening within a country, and figuring out the pathways of hopefully eliminating that condition. So going back to Gerald's commentary about, diagnostic products, are there certain low cost, easy to use, hopefully a data push of a diagnostic product that would be used for treating testing for dengue fever. Or maybe it's, STDs or STIs, any of that type of element where you can have better testing, better resolve of seeing where that disease is actually located, and then obviously treated and treatable. I think is the underlying need of what we're doing and what Britt's company is doing to potentially alleviate a lot of those hardships going forward within a disease area.
Interesting. Gerald, coming back to you, I was reading an article yesterday and it said that 54% of the patients do not understand their diagnosis. Now, when they don't understand the diagnosis, they are Googling everything and trying to find solutions without even understanding what issue they have. So being a diagnostic company, how do you resolve that issue?
Well, the problem is you can't look at a diagnostic in a vacuum, right? A diagnostic is part of a broader healthcare picture. And you have to understand that broader healthcare picture to understand where that diagnostic fits. So I do think there's obviously a big issue with Dr. Google in terms of people trying to assess their individual markers. That there is that's very good for some communities who've been really relegated by the medical community. For example, MECFS, they've had way ahead of the treating physicians in terms of what they know about their condition. And now with long COVID, it's being better understood. So there is that side of it where you do want the patients to be empowered to ask questions. And I think for that to be useful, we have to have better answers. And when I say that, I mean, I think a lot of doctors are not, don't have all the most up-to-date information at their fingertips with which to treat their patients. I think physician education is a big component, at least what we're seeing with long COVID. It's a huge component with long COVID, and I'm sure that has a big impact on other health conditions. So if there's one place where technology could, let's call it harmonize that, I think it would be that to standardize things a little bit more across the board.
Interesting. So I think we need to educate our physicians more. A lot of physicians also use a lot of jargon, which just bounces to the patients. They don't understand what the physician is saying. Coming to Britt, you have been working on mental health. Any specific reason and brain health? Any specific reason of choosing this subject? I know it's a big topic, but out there a lot of people who are working on mental health. Anything specific to you which made you focus on this big issue?
Well, it's certainly a sector of brain health. I have some personal experience in my family of having gone through that and seeing how insufficient the system is, regardless of what your insurance coverage is and your wallet. It's very, very challenging to get the right care, to learn to understand, and to manage treatment. If you look at the whole mental health landscape right now, when I talk to people at the head of the mental health space, I say, well, how are we going to solve this problem? We say that we need more doctors, more psychiatrists, and more counselors to work with these people. But right now, we probably can't even meet the needs of 1% of the people who want care. And there's so many different reasons for that. So, certainly access to care for financial reasons, whether they can't afford it, they don't have the insurance, the time it takes away, and the huge amount of stigma. So the stigma of perceived stigma, or if they're worried about going and what's going to happen with them and telling their family or others knowing or having it part of their health record. So there's so many problems, challenges with mental health care. And I think that it's a huge opportunity to bring this bring IT in to help solve this problem. We can't solve the really big needs, people who need inpatient care and who need that, but the day-to-day challenges of people and being able to track their cases, track their symptoms, where they are, coming back to AI and using that as a tool, as an assistant to try to guide them in understanding what their symptoms have been, the medications they're taking, the foods, and just trying to make sense of all of that. It's too much for a psychiatrist or to handle looking through all of that. And so that's where I think that when we talk about AI, it's a great assistant to be able to give that help.
Yeah, I'll just add to that too. One of the things with our CAPS program that runs under the Persona Analytics, and again, CAPS is a continuous analytic processing system. So again, continuously being the key, is it will also be starting in Q1 of next year of 2024, pulling in imaging data. So think of AI with imaging data, and for Britt's kind of group, on the mental health side, there's a lot of, I think, beauty of medical information will come out of those imaging AI runs that will probably lend itself to really kind of seeing, where there might be particular patient types for, this type of disease and or condition, and then another sector of another disease and or condition, which I think is going to be very, very interesting as the AI generation really takes a hold on the data. But just something to add to that.
Interesting. Eric, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Britt, as well. So Britt mentioned that the whole idea of mental health came because of her own personal challenges and family personal challenges. Eric, I was reading about you and your post, and I figured out that you lost your father in a heart transplant. And I also lost my father when I was very young. How did losing your father or somebody you loved so much change your perspective about healthcare and healthcare industry?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. He passed away actually from sepsis. Ironically, Gerald, you and I kind of commented about that, but he actually died, never made it out of the hospital. So he had a heart transplant at age 52. He had a couple of heart attacks prior and actually bypassed prior. And at age 52, had a heart transplant and never made it out. And so for me, that kind of drove me into healthcare. I was kind of already in it, but really I knew then and there that, to stay in healthcare to really help others was a driving commitment of mine. And so, as I moved into different roles within some of the large organizations, I was in the cardiology area as well as now sepsis areas. And so, figuring out ways and pathways of, again, betterment of health and betterment of health conditions and hopefully solving kind of the disease question and getting something under control is, what I've always felt is a driver of mine and my passion, to be frank.
Excellent. So that's how I think both Britt and you have been able to convert your mess into a message for somebody out there who can use your passion and vision, because it's now not just a business anymore. It's something which you want to do for somebody else because you have gone through this mess and it's becoming a mess for others. Thank you so much, Britt and Eric, for doing this. Gerald, coming back to you. Now, long COVID, you have been talking a lot about it. And you also talk about the cancer diagnostics which you are doing at early stage cancer diagnostics. So what is your strongest why? What makes you get out of your bed every day? And this is my mission, this is my vision. So why is your why so strong, which wakes you up every day and gives you the energy and the power and the wisdom to work every day so hard?
Well, over the years it's changed. There's always a reason. But right now it's certainly because we are seeing that we're able to help patients who have long COVID. And it's really quite interesting and moving to be able to have that kind of impact and have a good idea of what's going on and be the first movers in that space. So for us, every day I speak with long haulers. I see the chats from the internal customer service boards, and seeing people get better is it's very, very, very empowering. So we want to see that happen for a lot more people, because we think that this is only getting started, just biologically, and that we're at big risk, so that we should be taking extra precaution to protect ourselves now and into the future.
Interesting. Let's talk money for some time. Gerald, how easy or difficult it is to raise money in the diagnostic sector currently?
It's not easy right now. I think in general the healthcare space has been down, especially on the smaller side, as a lot of larger restructurings are happening. Interesting, the healthcare services space is making tons of money. So it's an interesting dichotomy. But for us right now, I think the focus is on the treatment side and the supplementation side. And the distribution side, I think really cash flow is king right now in the marketplace. And so driving, sales and marketing and distribution of our products in the market, that's where our focus is. And that's going pretty well. We've signed a distribution agreement to the health and wellness community with a very large organization called FullScript. So it's the largest supplement distribution platform to physicians in the country. And we're getting ready to, enact a marketing campaign to drive that. So right now, actually, we're raising money for materials to be able to support and drive that. And which is, it's an interesting space because people are just, for about a year to a year and a half, everybody was like, there's no more COVID, it was gone. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, wait a minute, it's still here. And now long COVID is becoming, much more well understood. It's in the nightly news, as Eric pointed out. And I think it's going to be a campaign issue heading into 2024. Because there's a lot of people with long COVID and a lot of people who have to take care of people with long COVID. And so financially, it's having an impact all the way to the level of the Federal Reserve. Although they stopped talking about it last year in, I think November was the last time they said long COVID. So it'd be interesting to see what their updates are on the cost.
I have a question for you, Gerald. So we're only a couple of years into COVID, long COVID, and we're seeing long COVID, and it's scary, but do we have any kind of reasonable forecast of what the 5, 10, 20, 30 year marks look like? What other things might be cropping up, or is it going to settle down? Or
I think it's entirely dependent upon what we do. I mean, I think I think biologically we can solve it. So if we put the research dollars and the efforts and the coordination, I think, we're having an impact, and, we have a dietary supplement. We've done precision engineering and we know it does XYZ. But, we're having a big impact with this product, and it's not, super high tech. But that's, a great place to start for now. I think over time, if you put more money in and you get better products, I think you can absolutely have, turn this into something more manageable. But the question is, can you reconstitute the immune system? And then when are we going to stop getting COVID over and over? I think those are the real issues, because if, regardless of what you do, if you keep getting COVID, eventually something else is going to have an easier time coming on. I think those are the high level issues we have to think about.
yeah, I wonder if there's something worse to come.
I'm sure there is.
Hopefully not.
Every 5 years or so.
Hoping hasn't done well for us recently. So.
Good. So, Britt, how about you? So, how easy or difficult it is to raise money in the mental health, brain health space when you're making an app for the world out there?
It's an excellent question, and I'm about to learn. I've dodged that part of my job for 3 years. I started out investigating and quickly learned enough to learn that the longer I could bootstrap, the better. So 3 full years of bootstrapping, and actually I'm just shipped off my pitch deck yesterday to the first investor that immediately said no. So far, pretty tough, but there's a lot of them out there, and I'm really excited about what we're doing. So lots of partnerships to be had, and lots of incredible investors that we're hoping to team with.
Interesting.
Yeah,
what do you think about it, Eric?
I was going to say, as Gerald said, perseverance and persistence.
So Gerald is now raising money for a good problem he is having for materials and for supplying to the clients, the customers. Britt is starting to raise money, sent out the first deck yesterday. What is your take on raising money in health tech now?
Yeah, I agree. Gerald, mentioned that it's a little tough, I think, in the biotech area. What I've seen actually in the AI area, obviously, because again, it's a hot buzzword now in the marketplace, it's actually opening doors. We're seeing that in the healthcare space, like with hospital VCs as an example, they're looking for new ways to reduce costs, to better patient outcomes, et cetera. And so if you have something that can potentially do that for them, that's a win-win, both for the company, but also for them and their institution that they're handling from a foundation and or VC standpoint. Where I think it becomes interesting is more the government side of things. We've got Dr. Redfield, Dr. Robert Redfield's on my team, the former CDC director. And as you may or may not have known, he did a lot of work in his past life before being the CDC director under President Bush #2, working in Africa with HIV and AIDS, which ironically, again, different disease state, but kind of similar to long COVID, where it's something where you get it and you sometimes have it for a long period of time. How do you treat it? How do you minimize it? How do you minimize the impact? And so he's got a lot of connections into countries. And so through those, we've had some conversations with the health ministers of these countries and finding out ways or pathways that a country would be able to fund different mechanisms. And so that's opened some doors as well. So I think it's really trying to, again, going back to Britt, never give up, be persistent, be resilient, and really have patience, I think is key. But trying to find out, where there are those synergistic either investment partners, VCs, countries that kind of tie into your tech and really would see the value of your tech and be a partner.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric, for that advice. Gerald, over to you. So you mentioned that your technology is patented and you are big on IP. So what are your main reasons for patenting your technology? What were your reasons?
Oh, well, you can only really commercialize technology if it's protected, realistically. So, I mean, we've got several different, let's call them families. We've got this AI around cancer and potentially other immune-related disorders. We've got some IP out of Harvard around a blood test. We have some IP out of, that's for breast cancer. We have some IP out of the University of Leipzig around Alzheimer's blood test. And then we have some IP around the use of this protease, the 3CL, both for diagnosing and treating COVID and, if you still have COVID, which becomes long COVID. So, for us, it's very important to attract investment. People like to know that you have a proprietary position. And certainly with the FDA, if you want to get in the Orange Book, you also have to have intellectual property that's relevant. So there are a myriad of regulatory and investment reasons why it's important to focus on IP. And, IP obviously can be very complicated, especially in the diagnostic space. So we like to work in areas where we have unique data sets that, gives us a strategic advantage.
So does IP also help you raise money?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And does also help you in getting health tech companies acquired?
Absolutely. That's what people want to buy. They want to buy a proprietary position in a market.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Britt, is your app protected by any IP?
Yeah, we did a huge omnibus PCT filing for quite a few processes. The entire hole-in-one platform. The first year that I spent was really the advice of some attorneys I met early on, just to hunker down and talk to a select few people and really just get everything filed. So we filed the provisional and then the follow-on last year. So we haven't pursued that because that takes a lot of money. But the goal of doing that is really more defensive. Not as much as an asset, but as a protection against going out and talking about our ideas and having somebody swipe it. They've got a bigger checkbook and more people to focus on it. So that was really our goal on that. And we hired a big firm to do it, to make sure we did it right. If we're going to invest, we're going to do it right. And then we also did trademark on Hole-in-One Health, which we filed in 40 countries. And that's wrapping up now. And we've got almost all of those done.
Very good. Very, very good. Very nice. Eric, what's your take on IP in your current business?
Yeah, I mean, we've got IP between ourselves and SaaS. And so that's been obviously, a driver of the CAPS, the Continuous Analytical Processing System project and platform. And that's a huge element just to make sure that both organizations, obviously SaaS is a multi-billion, I'm a 3-year-old company, but that IP protection not only lends itself to protecting our company, but really protecting the future of both companies, because the aspect of SaaS, they're going to be looking to go public over the next year or so. And so the IP that we would have between the two companies and the scalable platform that we have that can go global pretty easily, that's a huge benefit. And again, something that lends itself to my company from an investor standpoint and lends itself to my company from a longevity standpoint as well.
Interesting. Thank you so much for throwing light on the IP side. Eric, coming back to you, in the US, what do you think is a critical need in the healthcare sector, apart from what you're doing, the data integration? What else are the critical needs of the US healthcare system?
Well, I mentioned earlier the silo breakdown. I mean, I think I still say that's probably the largest need, excuse me, in the healthcare space, just to make sure that those silos are broken and the data sharing can cross between one element of a network to another freely. Then I really, think the other side of the coin is again, that's why our company is called Persone. It's the personal ownership, Persone, ownership of your healthcare data. And to really have the ability to trace and track that data like you do with credit cards and charging something at a store, when it's charged, how much, et cetera. Having control of your healthcare data is also kind of just as important. Actually, it's a heck of a lot more important. But I think it's an area that allows somebody to give the ability to provide their testing information if they so choose. More freely the healthcare data side of the electronic health records, if they want to share it, that's something that they can choose to do or not choose to do. I think that's something that as we move forward over the next few years, as things become more digitized, et cetera, it's going to allow that format to happen. And so I think that's a definite need. And then just last but not least, as Gerald mentioned, I think having those tools on the diagnostic front to really make an impact and make a difference, to have something that can be quickly used, easily used, and to provide a very, very valid, basically a high sensitivity, high specificity type of testing result that gives obviously a huge, outcome to those patients.
Thank you so much, Eric. Coming to you, Britt, I was reading an article. It said that about 85% of diseases, whether it is diabetes or blood pressure or cancer, they stem out from stress, which means mental health. Now, give us some tips to our audience here. How can they take care of, what changes can they make in their lifestyle to take care of their stress and remove stress from their lives to have a better mental health?
Right. Yeah. Stress is a big one. And I think that's the one I feel at the most. I do my exercise, but actually sitting down and meditating and breathing and taking the time to do that, it's only a few minutes really. So it's a big one. So our platform for Alzmeter is, we say DIPS Alzheimer's with SLEDS, which is delay, improve, prevent, or slow. And SLEDS, one of those S's is for stress management. And so we give people education about why it's important and tools of ways to do it, including some connections with partners like Headspace. But on the broader scale, and when we look at across all of mental health, and Eric's talking about giving people the tools to have all their data, really the next step, data is great, and I'm a data geek and I love data and I want to be able to have my data, but giving them that intelligence on top of that. So the insights, and part of that is you have your data and your blood pressure is high and you've got the diabetes and you're inputting things and you're doing your stress apps or you're not doing your stress apps. And so being given that personalized information about how you can improve, what tools are out there that fit well for you, because there's hundreds of different apps out there. And so really distilling that down so people aren't just searching Dr. Google for advice, but bringing in the intelligence of computing, whether it's AI or ML, and giving them tools that make sense to them is really important.
So one article I was reading, and it mentioned a very funny thing. People in the US or other countries talk about stress management. They want to manage their stress. They don't want to get rid of the stress. They want to manage it. Why people want to manage stress? The objective should be to get rid of stress, but not manage stress. So what's your take on that?
I guess my personal take would be stress is part of life. So depending on what life you choose, I say that there's some people who just don't seem to have that stress. And so that's not an issue for them. But for most of us in the grind of work, whether it's something we love to do or hate to do, we push ourselves. And I think that's part of the American way. And that probably goes beyond America as well, that some people are just prone to stress and other people just thrive on stress. I think I thrive on it, but it's a challenge to try to manage it.
Interesting. Gerald, what do you do to unwind yourself?
Well, I actually play hockey. So I grew up in Canada, in Montreal, Canada. So on the weekends I play hockey. That's working out and playing hockey is kind of the only thing that kind of takes stress away. Everything else is very stressful.
And Gerald, what about you? What do you do to unwind yourself?
You're saying me, Eric?
Yeah, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for me, it's take time, as Britt said, that kind of therapy of meditating and just kind of taking time away for, might be a couple of minutes, but just being able to do that, relax, do that. Working out is huge. Again, going with Gerald, I'm not a hockey player, but same type of thing where you're doing something consistent and, getting a good workout and good sweat on is huge. And then I love golf. And so for me, that's my thing. And, I can spend an hour and a half, a couple times a week and, beating 200 balls at a time is a huge win-win to kind of relieve that stress as well. As long as they're going straight. If they start going left or right, then that stress comes.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you very much, guys. I'll just ask one last question to all of you, starting with Britt. Britt, if people want to launch their app on iOS or on Play Store, what is your advice to them? Because you have walked that path. What should they not do, and what should they focus on?
Oh, we're still pretty early in this. I think we delayed our rolling out to the App Store quite a while. So we tried to do our internal testing, and the internal testing has a lot of limitations. And so looking back at it, I think I would have pulled back and cut down on the features and gotten it to the App Store, and maybe just made it fully free for all versions earlier on, so that we could start getting our feedback sooner before we had our fully committed app. You get lots more people, and that may change the path of development of the additional features that we're still working on.
So, I especially for the software industry, I learned one thing: the perfection should not become an enemy of progress. Yeah. Because you want to roll out the perfect product and you're just delaying and procrastinating, perhaps not procrastinating, but trying to make it perfect, in that you're delaying the progress. Do you think it's right that perfection should not become enemy of progress?
I think that's one of my biggest battles, and I've been told that too. Stop being a perfectionist. I don't think of myself as a perfectionist, but it's, I don't know. I just really get into the details, and I play devil's advocate when I look at it and say, but someone won't like it because of this, or this doesn't work perfect. And I felt better when I started really paying attention to my own experience using other apps and having them break, and big name apps, and saying, well, gosh, we just deal with this, It's not great, but this is how apps work. This is how software works. So accepting a level of that is fine. Accepting it to go to launch, but we always want to try to make it perfect.
Yes, absolutely. Gerald, over to you. Tell us your two most important learnings as an entrepreneur, which you can pass on to the next generation who are wanting to start their own ventures, any venture. Two more entrepreneurial learning.
Go after a problem that's big enough that if you don't solve it the way you think you're going to, there's still space there. Because once you're in a field, you can typically maneuver in that field. And then choose your investors wisely. Make sure you get good investors who see the vision with you.
Brilliant. Solve a big problem and choose your partners and investors wisely. Thank you, Gerald. Eric, over to you. Some wisdom which you can pass on to the younger generation thinking of starting their own companies.
Yeah, Gerald made a great point. I think the ability to find a market that's large enough and not be nichey, I think is a huge benefit and a huge win-win. So I will totally agree with that. To add to that, again, excuse me, guys. It's really having the drive and the passion, and to ensure that you have that behind what you want to do. That's the kind of the huge benefit of running an organization, because if you have the drive and have the passion, things will fall into place. And again, that persistency, the the drive and the initiative behind that just is put into place. So I would say that's kind of point number 2. Point number 3 would be, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to go in different directions. Try it. Being a small company, you can be very nimble at the beginning. And so you can try new things. And if it doesn't work, you try something else. And so don't be afraid.
Brilliant. Take massive action. This great conversations, Eric, Britt, and Gerald. Thank you very much for coming over today and giving your beautiful wisdom to people out there. Everybody can use what you said. Everything you said was totally usable. Thank you so much for coming over. I'm truly in debt for your time. Have a great day ahead, and I thank you again for coming on this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Britt. Thank you, Eric. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.